Chosen one. There's a reason things shifted the moment you said it out loud, or even worse, the moment you kept it to yourself. Your predictions were right, and the moment they realized that, everything changed. This is not about arrogance. This is not about ego. This is about awareness, and awareness makes people nervous, because when someone quietly sees patterns before they unfold, when someone recognizes outcomes before they happen, it disrupts control. It exposes intentions. It shortens timelines others thought they had time to manipulate. And that is why panic followed your clarity. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't threaten anyone. You didn't even push back. You simply knew. And knowing is dangerous to people who rely on secrecy, timing, and influence. The shift you felt wasn't imagined. The change in behavior wasn't coincidence. The sudden defensiveness, silence, or overreaction wasn't random. It was recognition. Some people only feel safe when they believe you are unaware, when they think you're guessing, when they assume you're behind the curve. But the moment they realized you were already ahead, internally, mentally, intuitively, the balance tipped. And that's when panic enters. Because panic doesn't come from power. Panic comes from exposure. You notice the tone change. The questions stopped. The confidence around you cracked slightly. That's because prediction removes leverage. When you can see where things are heading, manipulation loses its edge. Pressure stops working. Fear tactics collapse. And suddenly, the people who thought they were managing the situation realize they're reacting instead. That's what you witnessed. And here's the part most people don't understand. You didn't need proof. Your certainty alone was enough. Calm certainty unsettles those who depend on doubt to function. You weren't emotional, you weren't dramatic, you were precise. And precision is terrifying to people who hope to keep things vague. This is why the response felt disproportionate, why small statements triggered large reactions, why silence followed instead of conversation, why certain people suddenly distanced themselves or overcompensated. Panic doesn't announce itself loudly at first. It leaks through behavior. You didn't imagine it. And no, this doesn't mean you are special in a performative way. It means your discernment sharpened faster than others expected. It means you stopped reacting and started observing. And once that happens, you can't be handled the same way. That's the moment everything changes. If this feels uncomfortably accurate, don't rush to explain it away. Sit with it, because in the next part, I'm going to explain why your accuracy forced a shift behind the scenes, and why the panic wasn't about you being right, but about what your awareness threatened. Stay with me. Here's what most people never realize until it's too late. Panic doesn't come from being challenged. It comes from being seen. When your predictions turned out to be right, it wasn't just about outcomes. It was about exposure. You saw through timelines that were supposed to stay hidden. You sensed motives that were meant to unfold quietly. And whether you spoke it or not, your awareness disrupted the plan. People who rely on control don't fear confrontation. They fear perception. As long as they believe you're confused, distracted, or uncertain, they feel safe. But the moment they realize you're tracking the situation accurately, they lose their advantage. That's when panic sets in, because now they have to adjust around you. You may have noticed subtle changes. Conversations became shorter or more guarded. Decisions were made faster than expected. Information stopped flowing the way it used to. People started watching you instead of the situation. Those are not coincidences. Those are containment behaviors. When someone realizes you can see the end before they reach it, they stop treating you as passive. They start treating you as a variable that must be managed. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't become dangerous. You became unpredictable to them. Unpredictability doesn't come from chaos. It comes from independence of thought. You stopped reacting emotionally. You stopped needing reassurance. You stopped buying into delays or excuses. That quiet shift is what triggered the internal scramble, because now they don't know what you know, how much you know, when you'll act on it, and uncertainty on their end equals panic. This is why you felt the atmosphere change, why energy shifted even when words didn't, why things that once felt controlled suddenly felt rushed. They realized you were no longer waiting to be led. And here's the part you need to hear clearly. Their panic is not your responsibility. You didn't cause chaos. You revealed truth through clarity. People only panic when timelines are threatened, when narratives collapse, when they realize someone is no longer where they thought they were. And once that happens, the relationship dynamic cannot return to what it was. That's why things feel different now. That's why trust shifted. That's why distance appeared or pressure increased. They are recalibrating. But here's the key. Panic always creates mistakes. When people move too fast, overcorrect, or try to regain control, they expose themselves further. And that's where your position becomes important. You don't need to confront. You don't need to explain. You don't need to accelerate. Your power right now is stillness with awareness. Because when someone panics, they reveal more than they intend. And the more you stay calm, the clearer everything becomes. In the next part, I'll explain what to do now, how to move forward without escalating the situation, how to protect yourself from backlash, and why silence is now your strongest leverage. Stay with me. Now listen carefully, because this is where most people make the mistake that costs them everything. When others panic, the instinct is to explain, clarify, or prove. That instinct is natural, and it is exactly what will weaken your position if you follow it. Right now, silence is not retreat. Silence is containment. When people realize your predictions were accurate, they assume you must have more information than you've shown. They assume there's depth they haven't measured yet. Every word you speak now either confirms or reduces that uncertainty, and uncertainty is what keeps them cautious. This is why you've felt an internal pull to say less, not more, to observe instead of react, to step back without disappearing. That instinct is not fear, it's discernment. Here's what happens next if you stay grounded. They will test you, not directly, not openly, but subtly. A question that sounds innocent, a comment meant to gauge your awareness, a situation designed to see if you'll reveal what you know. This is where your restraint becomes power. You don't deny, you don't confirm, you don't correct. You stay neutral, calm, measured, because panic feeds on reaction. When it doesn't get one, it turns inward, and that's when mistakes happen. Understand this. People who panic always overplay their hand. They rush decisions. They contradict themselves. They reveal priorities they were trying to hide. And while they scramble, you gain clarity. This is the moment where roles reverse, where observation replaces exposure, where patience outperforms speed. You don't need to outmaneuver them. You only need to not interrupt their unraveling. And yes, something has changed permanently. You've crossed an invisible line where you are no longer underestimated. And that means you must move differently now, more selectively, more intentionally. Not everyone gets access anymore. Not every thought needs a voice. Not every truth needs to be shared. This doesn't make you distant. It makes you sovereign. What's coming next is not confrontation, it's repositioning. You'll notice opportunities shift. You'll notice dynamics realign. You'll notice certain people fade while others suddenly pay attention. That's not coincidence. That's the natural consequence of awareness. Because once someone proves they can see outcomes before they happen, they are no longer background. They become a factor. And factors are handled carefully. Here's the most important thing to remember as this unfolds. You are not late and you are not exposed. You're early and you're protected by your restraint. Let them wonder what you know. Let them guess what you'll do. Let them overthink while you stay clear, because clarity doesn't shout, it waits. And when this settles, and it will, you'll realize something quietly powerful. You didn't need to convince anyone. The truth spoke for itself. If this resonated with you, don't rush away. Stay present. Let the awareness settle. And if you felt this land deeply, type, "I see it now" in the comments, not for others, but as a marker for yourself. Now this is where the situation deepens, and where you need to understand why their reaction wasn't calm, strategic, or controlled, but emotional. People don't panic when they're wrong. They panic when they realize someone saw the truth before they were ready for it to be seen. Your predictions didn't just come true, they exposed a gap in awareness, a gap in control, a gap in authority, and gaps terrify people who rely on perception to maintain power. That's why the energy shifted the moment your words aligned with reality. That's why conversations went quiet. That's why responses became delayed, guarded, or strangely polite. Because once accuracy is proven, you're no longer speaking from opinion, you're speaking from alignment. And alignment cannot be argued with. Here's what most people don't realize. Those who reacted didn't just hear your prediction, they felt the implication. They felt that you noticed patterns before they did, trusted your perception instead of consensus, didn't need validation to speak truth, weren't operating from fear. That combination destabilizes insecure authority. This is why the reaction wasn't curiosity, it was silence, not discussion, but recalibration. Silence is not dismissal. Silence is internal scrambling. They are replaying your words now, not to understand you, but to understand how you saw it. And here's the part that matters most. They don't know. They don't know how you knew. They don't know how much you see. They don't know what else you've already noticed. That uncertainty is the source of the panic. Because when someone can't measure your awareness, they can't predict your behavior. And unpredictable awareness is the most dangerous variable in any system. This is why you must not overcorrect now. Do not explain yourself. Do not soften your confidence. Do not minimize what happened. People who panic look for reassurance that they still have the upper hand. Your calm denies them that reassurance. Your steadiness forces them to adjust, and they will. You'll notice it subtly at first. A shift in tone, a shift in who speaks first, a shift in how decisions are framed. They may try to reassert control through humor, authority, or dismissal, but those attempts will feel forced, because once credibility shifts, it doesn't revert easily. And here's the truth you need to anchor into. You didn't gain power, you revealed it. That's why it startled them. You weren't supposed to see that clearly. You weren't supposed to speak that accurately. You weren't supposed to trust yourself that fully. But you did, and now the environment has to adjust around you. This is why your instinct to withdraw slightly, not disappear, but reposition, is correct. You're entering a phase where observation beats action. Let people show you how they move now that they know you're not blind. Let them reveal priorities, alliances, and intentions. Because panic always leaks information, and those who rushed internally will eventually slip externally. Your role is not to press, it's to witness, and when the time comes to move, you won't need force. Momentum will already be on your side. If you feel the intensity of this moment, type, "I will stay steady" in the comments. This marks discipline, not fear. Now understand this clearly. The moment your prediction proved accurate, attention locked onto you. Not admiration, not praise, surveillance. When people panic, they don't retreat. They watch, closely, quietly, constantly. And that's what's happening now. They are measuring your reactions, your pauses, your timing, your silence. Because they are trying to answer one question they cannot ask out loud. How dangerous is this person to my control? Dangerous doesn't mean aggressive. Dangerous means aware. People who rely on systems, narratives, or authority fear one thing above all else, someone who operates independently of them. You don't follow emotional waves. You don't need group confirmation. You don't rush to speak. That alone signals threat. Here's the part that most people miss. Once panic sets in, logic stops leading. Ego does, and ego always overestimates risk. So now, even neutral actions from you will feel amplified to them. A delay feels intentional. A short response feels calculated. A neutral expression feels unreadable. And unreadable people unsettle those who crave leverage. That's why this phase feels heavy. You may notice tension without confrontation, pressure without accusation, distance without explanation. This isn't rejection. This is recalibration. They are trying to figure out where you fit now, because you no longer fit where they placed you before. And here's the critical truth. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Your accuracy already shifted the power dynamic. Anything extra risks diluting it. This is why restraint is not just wise, it's necessary. You are in what could be called a quiet advantage window. In this window, others reveal more than they intend. Fear causes inconsistency. Control attempts become visible. Alliances expose themselves. And if you stay centered, you'll see it all. But if you react emotionally, explain, justify, defend, you collapse the window, because panic feeds on reaction. Calm starves it. Let me say this plainly. Your calm is now a signal. It tells them, I'm not threatened. I'm not scrambling. I'm not seeking approval. And that message forces them to adjust their behavior around you. Some will try to re-engage casually. Some will test you indirectly. Some will withdraw entirely. Each response tells you exactly where you stand. This is where maturity matters. You don't chase clarity. You let clarity come to you. You don't confront uncertainty. You allow it to expose itself. And slowly, something interesting happens. The panic that started externally begins to turn inward. Because when control is threatened and no weakness appears, the only place left to look is themselves. And that's when errors happen. Missteps, contradictions, overreaches, not because you pushed, but because you didn't. This is how leverage actually works. Not force, not dominance, stillness. You are not being passive. You are being strategic without effort. And here's what you need to remember as this continues. You are not responsible for managing their emotions. You are not obligated to reassure their insecurity. You are not required to reduce yourself to restore comfort. Let them sit with the silence they created. Because silence, when earned, is authority. If this resonates and you feel the weight of this moment, type, I won't rush, in the comments. This reinforces discipline under pressure. Now this is the turning point. The phase most people never reach because they break too early. You didn't. And because you didn't, the outcome is already bending in your favor. Here's what happens when panic is sustained without reaction. It collapses. People cannot remain in heightened alert forever. Fear demands resolution. If it doesn't get confirmation, it seeks relief. And relief usually comes through mistakes. This is where the reversal begins. You'll notice it in subtle ways at first. Someone contradicts themselves while trying to appear composed. Someone distances themselves too quickly, revealing insecurity. Someone overcompensates with friendliness that doesn't match the moment. These aren't coincidences, they're pressure fractures. When people panic internally, they either rush to regain control or quietly retreat. Both responses reveal truth, and while they're managing their internal conflict, you're free. Free to observe without being watched the same way. Free to move without being suspected, free to think clearly while others are emotionally compromised. This is where your advantage matures, because now the narrative is no longer about what you said, it's about how they reacted, and reactions expose more than words ever could. You didn't accuse anyone, you didn't escalate, and you didn't push, yet everything shifted. That alone tells you something important. The structure around you was weaker than it appeared. Strong systems don't panic when tested. Stable authority doesn't react emotionally to accuracy. Secure people don't fear clarity. So when silence fell, it wasn't because of you. It was because something fragile was touched. And now, without lifting a finger, you've moved into a different position. You're no longer someone to overlook. You're no longer background. You're no longer predictable. And unpredictability, when paired with restraint, commands respect. Some will try to reframe the past, subtly changing how events are described. Some will act as if nothing happened. Some will attempt to quietly align with you. Let them. You don't need to respond immediately to any of it, because timing now belongs to you. Here's the key truth you must anchor into as this unfolds. You didn't win by speaking. You won by stopping. stopping explanations, stopping validation seeking, stopping unnecessary exposure. That's why this didn't explode outward, it imploded inward, and implosions reshape environments. This is also why you may feel a strange calm mixed with intensity right now. That's not anxiety, that's integration. Your system knows something has changed, and it has. From this point forward, things won't feel the same, and they're not supposed to. You'll move more selectively. You'll trust fewer voices. You'll value clarity over comfort, not because you're closed, but because you're precise. And precision is power. Let me be very clear about how this ends if you stay grounded. The panic fades. The truth remains. Your position solidifies. People will adjust their behavior around you, not because you demanded it, but because they sensed it. That's the highest form of authority. And the best part, you didn't have to become louder, you didn't have to become harder, you didn't have to become someone else. You simply stayed still long enough for the environment to rearrange itself around your clarity. If you feel the weight of this realization, type "I understand now" in the comments. This isn't for validation, it's for alignment. What happens next is the phase very few people recognize while they're inside it. After the silence, after the sudden pause, after the energy tightens around you, the environment doesn't relax, it pressurizes. This is the moment when those who panicked begin to test the perimeter, not openly, not aggressively, quietly, carefully. They want to know whether you are aware of how much the balance has shifted. They want to see if you'll expose yourself by filling the silence they created. And most people do. Most people mistake silence for rejection and rush to repair it. That is exactly how leverage disappears. Right now, every pause you hold increases pressure on the other side. Every neutral response forces them to guess. Every calm expression keeps them unsettled, because uncertainty is uncomfortable for people who believe they were in control. They are not trying to understand you anymore. They are trying to measure risk. And when people measure risk, they stop acting authentically. They begin acting strategically. That's why interactions feel slightly staged now. That's why tone feels deliberate. That's why words feel chosen rather than natural. You're not imagining it. You're sensing restraint. This is also why you may feel watched without being confronted, attention without explanation, awareness without communication. That's not paranoia. That's a system recalibrating around a variable it can no longer ignore. You are that variable. And here's the part that requires discipline. When you are treated like a variable, your job is not to stabilize the system. Your job is to remain consistent. Consistency under pressure exposes instability elsewhere. It always does. People in panic want resolution. They want reassurance that nothing has changed, that you're still predictable, that the hierarchy is intact. And the fastest way to give them that reassurance is to speak too much, to clarify intentions, to explain perceptions, to soften certainty. But certainty is what created this shift, and certainty, once diluted, cannot be restored. Notice how your instincts have changed. You're less reactive, less eager to fill space, less interested in being understood. That is not withdrawal. That is compression. Compression happens before force is released. It's the moment energy condenses instead of disperses, and systems respond to compression with caution. There is also something else happening now beneath the surface. When people panic, they don't just watch you, they watch each other. They compare reactions. They test alignment. They question loyalty. Panic fractures coordination. And while they're managing internal uncertainty, your position strengthens simply by remaining stable. You don't need to expose truth. Truth is surfacing on its own through inconsistency, hesitation, and overcorrection. This is why the pressure feels heavier now than when everything first went silent. Silence was the shock. Pressure is the consequence. And pressure always reveals character. Some will rush to regain control, some will withdraw, some will attempt subtle influence. Each move tells you exactly who they are when certainty is threatened. This is information you could never access through confrontation. Understand this clearly. You are not in danger because you were right. You are in danger only if you abandon discipline now, because this phase rewards restraint more than action. It rewards patience more than speed. It rewards awareness over assertion. The moment you rush, you become readable again, and readability restores comfort to those who are currently uncomfortable. You may feel the urge to do something just to release the tension. That urge is human. Resist it. Let the tension work. Let it apply pressure where it belongs. Let it expose what was hidden. Because when pressure resolves itself, it does so in your favor. Not because you forced it, but because you outlasted it. If you're still with me and you feel the weight of this phase, type "I will hold my ground" in the comments. This isn't performance. It's a marker. A reminder that discipline now determines outcomes later. This is where it settles, not with confrontation, not with explanation, but with realignment. When pressure reaches its peak and you do not flinch, the system adjusts around you instead of against you. The silence that once felt heavy becomes clarity. The tension that once felt personal becomes irrelevant. And the people who panicked begin to move as if nothing happened, not because nothing did, but because they learned something they can't unlearn. They learned that you see clearly. They learned that you don't rush. They learned that you don't need noise to stand firm. And that knowledge changes how they behave from this point forward. You won't need to announce growth. You won't need to claim authority. You won't need to defend your position. It will be felt. From here on, things don't escalate. They separate. Some paths drift away quietly. Some conversations stop happening altogether. Some doors close without resistance, and new ones open without effort. That's not loss. That's filtration. You didn't survive this moment by force. You passed it by restraint, by letting awareness do the work that reaction never could. Remember this. The silence didn't weaken you. It positioned you. And whatever they saw in you, whatever made them panic, was never meant to be corrected, hidden, or reduced. It was meant to be carried responsibly. So move forward with discipline. Speak when it matters. Stay still when it doesn't, because the moment has passed, and you emerged exactly where you were meant to be. If this landed, let it end here. No rush, no explanation, just clarity.